So it's my great pleasure to welcome Anisha and Amit to come in and get yourself comfy. Now, it's my great pleasure to welcome Ida Damen, isn't it?
It is.
First of all, who I met through doing a PhD Viva as the external examiner a year ago. And it was a great PhD and passed with flying colours. And I learned quite a lot about why we shouldn't be sitting whilst we're working, but walking whilst working is, or working whilst walking, or both, is you know, it's really interesting to think about how that kind of embodiment changes the way in which we collaborate and work together. And I'd also received today a copy of the thesis, which I think is one of the best designed theses that I've ever seen. It's the most colourful. So there are two copies here you might want to have a look at just for some ideas. I mean, I think in the UK, we can't do anything quite as aesthetic and pleasing looking as this, but it's a really lovely thesis. So I'm going to hand over to Ida first, and then Rens will follow. So it's going to be a short talk because it's a double act.
We have a double act, yeah.
Yes, I believe that there's more than just coming from the Netherlands. There's a bit more that I'll let you introduce yourselves. But can I welcome Ida, who's going to be talking about designing for active office work.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, so this is actually, I'm going to start with my my PhD work. Thank you very much for inviting us, for inviting me and Rens for to tagging along, and that's very nice. I'm very happy that we're able to be here. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about my PhD work, and then I'll continue with the things I've done for the past year and how I would like to add on to the things I've learned during my PhD. So the title of my work is Designing for Active Office Work, and it all started with this sentence, which I do not completely agree upon. When you hear it more and more, sitting is the new smoking, which because I don't really I don't quite think that this is the truth, because sitting is not meaningful behavior like smoking could be, but still it highlights a very societal relevant issue here. So it's even considered the fourth cause of death worldwide by the World Health Organization, which of course is not a very nice message, but it's also an interesting opportunity to work towards from a design field and a research field. So I started at the University of Technology in Eindhoven in an office environment like this. This is actually the office environment where we used to do our work, sitting behind a desk, researching vitality. And it was welcome to the university. Here's your desk. You can sit here for 8 hours and good luck researching vitality. And we see that we tend to sit a whole lot. And we started to see, well, can we get a scope of all the interventions that are out there that target physical activity, increasing physical activity and reducing sedentary behavior in the office environment, because we found that there is little systematic research on interaction design strategies. So when we did a scoping review, we found two interesting gaps, we thought. So we saw that we reviewed 45 interventions, I'm sorry, and we found two gaps for us to move towards in terms of design research. So what are the gaps that we can take and then design for to increase physical activity or reduce sedentary behavior? First, we found that so the question was, how can interaction design contribute to stimulating physical activity in the office environment? We first started with scoping. Here are the 45 interventions that we found, that we reviewed, and we saw that there are a lot of phone applications. We also saw chairs, lamps, robots, and 3D printing being used. But the main thing was that there were two things that kind of were that those interventions had in common. So first, we saw that current interventions only make limited use of existing infrastructures and systems. So for instance, your digital calendar can tell you a lot about your day, but often there are new applications being made, and the existing infrastructures and systems, either digital or physically, are being used very scarcely. Second, and I thought that was more interesting even, was that physical activity is often approached as a break from work instead of something you could do whilst working. So with those two in mind, we explored the field of interaction design to see how we can create interventions that target physical activity or reducing sedentary behavior in the office environment. And we had some very fun experiments, I would say. First, we had a speculative design called ivy, which is a chair that grows ivy. The longer you sit, the more ivy would grow in the chair, using metaphors to see how we can get people to think about their own sitting behavior. So that was the first speculative design that we made, and we had another one. So the second one was called the office jungle, where we used bodily experimentations to see how we can learn from those bodily experimentations in light of how we could view the office environment. So you see here our mounts to use laptops. So there was all nice experimentations going on there to see what could be learned from those fun experiments. A third design that we made was called Tweak, where we used the digital calendar system of an office worker to see if we could tweak little messages into the digital calendar, for instance, and we used a lot of data points that we integrated into the calendar. So people would get a tweaked message in their digital calendar, like this is a meeting with just one other person. The weather is nice outside. Maybe this could be a meeting that you could take outside. So we used a lot of data points. We used profile information of a user. We also used, of course, the calendar data, activity tracker data, weather data, and we combined that to see if we could find the best fit for a certain prompt or a certain suggestion in a person's digital calendar. Then we came to the main design, I would say, from my thesis and from my work, and that is linked to walking meetings. So we created a research tool called the Work Walk on the campus of the University of Technology, and it composed of 3 elements. So first we had meeting point signs at all faculty buildings. We had a route with the dots here, and we had an integration with the room booking system. So for instance, you could book the work walk from a certain building. Instead of booking room 309, you would book the work walk from the Department of Industrial Design, and you know where you would meet. And the idea behind that was to increase the social acceptance of a certain behavior, in this case, walking whilst having a meeting. But we first started with a prototype with duct tape. So we duct taped the entire campus of 2 kilometers of duct tape. That took me almost a whole Saturday to kind of map out to duct tape the entire campus. So that was the first prototype, only to find out that after 48 hours, everything was removed because we did not involve all the people that needed to be involved. And I thought I did until the dean, but I forgot the faculty people that kind of thought, oh, this is probably some student party, and they made a whole baseball field or whatever. But they removed it after 48 hours instead of the 2-3 weeks I was hoping to collect data from. So in the end, we did a lot of iterations to figure out how can we find drivers and barriers of walking meetings. So we did walking interviews on that on the work walk. So as a research tool, we used it to find drivers and barriers, and I will highlight some of them. So first, the drivers we found, I think it was around 8 or 9, but I will just go through 4 of them. First off, we found that walking meetings tend to have very different social dynamics that you can use to actually to your advantage when you are when you're doing a meeting. For instance, difficult conversations tend to be easier when you have a walking meeting. We saw that in the literature when we look at psychology literature, but not so much in the work literature. So that was interesting to find there as well, that people used walking meetings to their advantage when it comes to social dynamics. Also, the visibility of the work walk helped people to think about the fact that they are able to do that. So you are, the employer actually says this is okay to do. So the social acceptance of a certain behavior will increase when you increase the visibility of a certain intervention. Then when we look at the time management, we saw that when it comes to drivers, it was interesting to see that, for instance, professors used this as a way to dedicate a specific amount of time to a student for a conversation, because they knew that that route would take them only 15 minutes and not more. So they would know that when they were approaching the entrance again, then the meeting was coming to a close. So they would close the meeting as well. And the student and the professor themselves, they knew that they were wrapping up their meeting. So it was used for time management. And we also saw that some interesting marks around the route could mark the moments in a meeting. So for instance, if you would have 3 agenda points, you might say, okay, we will wrap up our first agenda point at that mark in time in the space as well. Another, I thought it was quite fun to hear, is that often when people would have a walking meeting, they could recall the meeting a lot better than when they were stuck in a room with just white walls all around. But then the fact that they were able to kind of come back to the specific elements of a meeting when they saw a specific moment in that meeting, they could recollect their memories and the things they were talking about way better than when we compared to a normal meeting room. So we saw that as a driver for people to actually go into walking meetings. We also found a lot of barriers for walking meetings. And first off, hierarchy. So people were hesitant to ask their superiors to go for a walking meeting. They thought that it was not done or it was something different, so they were hesitant to propose a walking meeting. Also, we saw the time management as a driver, but we also found it as a barrier because people thought that it would take a lot longer to do walking meetings compared to sitting down, which is quite fun because, of course, 10 minutes of meeting while sitting down would be precisely the same time as you would walk for 10 minutes, but still the idea was that it would take a lot longer to go out. There is no daily routine often for this kind of practice, so they said, well, I just don't think about it. So it was not top of mind for people to go out and try a walking meeting. And fourth, this is, I think, a very common one that we often get, is that how do you take notes and how do you present stuff when you are taking a walking meeting, which we'll come back to with this subsequent design in a bit. So to combine all the design works, we wrapped it up in 6 recommendations for designing for active office work. And the first one is we should aim for physical activity throughout the workday. So not only during lunch breaks or not only for commute, but try to find moments throughout the day. Second, and related to the review that we did, was we should see if we should consider physical activity as something more than a break from work, because a break from work is very important and we should definitely encourage breaks during work as well, but we can also think about physical activity other than breaks from work. Also, we saw that a lot of interventions aim for creating awareness, but the motivation for people to become active can be more meaningful if we provide a motivation to be physically active. So sitting is not meaningful behavior. You sit to do something. So therefore, it's interesting to see if we can combine a motivation for people to become physically active, and that might enhance the effect of the intervention. Fourth, we should see if we can make use of existing office systems and tools and infrastructure for people to make it easier to adapt to a certain behavior. So, for instance, the agenda tool that we use, the agenda, digital agenda of a person. So making an intervention visible can increase the social acceptance, as we saw with the work walk. And I think this is also a very important one as a constant reminder for people that you can have an alternative behavior compared to sitting indoors in a meeting. And the sixth recommendation that we found was that we should, with interventions, not only target long-term health effects, but also look at what can be short-term benefits of a specific behavior, and not only focus on this will make you live longer, healthier and longer. So also short-term benefits. What will be beneficial for me if I do a walking meeting now? And that can be, for instance, the social dynamics, but it could also be like I will become more energized when I have a short walk. So it's important for interventions to also focus on short-term benefits. So what's next? We're trying to see how we can adapt an office environment to facilitate work emotion. And for one, we have, those are prototypes of what we call hubs. This is related to the barrier that we found of presenting and taking notes. So right now we're looking into how can we use these hubs at certain points to help people to present and take notes. But we're not sure if this would be the form. This can also be things that are already there in the environment. For instance, bus stops or other screens that are already in the public space. How can we use that and in our daily office work? So can we use maybe bus stops to see, can we present there something there? How do we then make use of the information? Can we just share everything? How do we take notes and make sure that the relevant information is shared? Do we want the information to be individual, or can we have a more collaborative information there, and how do we interact with them? So those are hubs that we are now testing. And we're also, does anyone know this? Do you have an idea what this might be? Very curious, because in the Netherlands, this is everyone I think would know this, but I guess here not. So I'm quite curious, what do you think this might be? Any ideas? This is a trash bin, and this is in a theme park in the Netherlands, and the Hollebolle Gijs is called, and Gijs will say, okay, I'm hungry. And the park is very clean because people, and mostly children, are very willing to throw their garbage into this trash bin because it's fun. So I'm very much into how can we adapt an environment to make it more fun to do a different type of behavior. This is also more related to physical activity, but I really like the work of Matthias Laschke, Pleasurable Troublemakers. And here you see, does anyone know the work, the Pleasurable Troublemakers? I highly recommend this work by this researcher, because I think it's really smart. Here you see an elevator, and the only thing it does is that if you want to go to 5, you press the button, but you know that you will actually be going to the 4th floor. But then the idea is that you walk another set of stairs. So I think this is really smart, and I'm very interested in this research direction of pleasurable troublemakers and how we can add to that and use this vision to see how we can adapt the office environment. Second, so I'm working at the Workplace Vitality Hub, which is a living lab in the high-tech campus area, so it's called the Brainport area in the Netherlands, in Eindhoven. And we have a lot of partners there that are working together to see how we can create the office of the future. So how can we use technology to enhance our vitality? So a lot of partners come together there. This is an image of the office environment, and we see, for instance, that we have privacy glass. It will be actually nice here to see how you can use that. And this partner is interested. How can we use this technology to our benefit and to advance our vitality? And there are a lot of different partners in this workplace vitality hub that work together, all with the same question: how can we how can we aid our own health and our vitality? And third, I'm interested in how we can implement and research work walks or walking meetings. So we are working together with different organizations. For instance, we see here a work walk at the University of Tilburg. We have now a permanent integration of the work walk at the University of Technology in Eindhoven, another campus where we are creating work walks and see how what types of research can be done further to further the implementation of this idea of facilitating walking meetings. And a sneak preview of a new paper for TIE, Tangible Embodied Interaction Conference, where we did where we explored embodied experiences of walking meetings through body storming, which I think will be fun, but that will be published shortly. And yeah, that's it for me. I hope that was good.
If you have questions, can I ask that you use the mic? You've got a couple of people online.